At first, you get these ideas of, it's all this, it's all here, me. And now I find that I can't work. I was just painting yesterday in my studio, and all the neighborhood kids are in there, and everybody's in there. So now I find it welcomed, that I like that interaction of the kids coming in. And I think it started with Bianca,
Oh, I think I'm like my dad. I mean, if you go out and look at his work, there's a lot of variety. You've got his paintings, and he's got drawings, and then he's got sculptures, and then your little woodblock pieces with the small paintings on them. And so I think when I was going through that, I was okay with it because I would see his work and see how his work had evolved. And, growing up with him, he was always constantly doing different things. He was always tinkering with one thing or another. So it was a nice influence to have on somebody who, I feel like I'm like him in that sense, that I don't want to just be pigeonholed into one little thing, and I want to try everything. So
experience it all.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, as much as you want to, there's always that connection. So I don't know if I necessarily wanted to be, exactly the polar opposite from my dad. And I think even when I was trying to discover myself and figure things out through my artwork, I'd create a piece and then I'd go home and be looking at something in my dad's studio and hold the two up next to each other and be like, okay, well, this sucks. They're exactly the same, Yeah. Because he did a series of highway drawings, and then a couple years ago I was doing prints about the highway and Florida landscape, and so that became important in my work too. I think, we were both driving in the car at the same time, across the state. So I think that just looking out the window, that had a lot of influence on both of us.
We try different things. We go and experience. Let's go to the beach and watch sunset, just to see sunset. And I think that's what's really nice, is that looking at some of her work right now, and you see the influence of that sunset. Just let's go do this, or let's do a random car ride, or just do something that's not the norm.
Instead of going to church every Sunday, we would take yoga classes on Thursday, and that was our
changed things up.
We took yoga instead of going to church.
Now you're into now you're into hula hooping and hula hooping with mom, and I did it too, which is kind of freaky, but I think that mom kind of creates these opportunities to do a lot of different things, and it's one of those things where you're just supportive. It's like, let's do it. Why not? What do we got to lose? And we're not on this planet that long, so let's experience it.
My children have been taken to just about every museum and gallery there is in this country at one time or another. Mostly because I was always off going to do workshops or give a lecture or something. And Matthew and I had our first show together up at C. Emerson in St. Petersburg together. And basically what happened was we started thinking about how we could interlock our pieces together. And there was a natural relationship with the landscape, but on the other hand, we also started figuring out how we could interlock our pieces together. So we'd actually be working on each other's pieces. We'd pass them back and forth, and he would be doing some photographic process, I'd be doing some drawing process, and then we would drop them over the top of each other or juxtaposition to each other. And it worked out extremely well for us to get our ideas across, but yet still remain independent and doing what we do. My son is more mature than I am. He's more understanding. He has a greater knowledge of contemporary photography. He lives in just in Bushwick in Brooklyn, and he makes his art daily. I guess that's the similarity. We just basically, he and I grew up making our own stuff until late in the morning. And it was always been, this is what takes precedence, and then what we do is we take care of the family after that. David Brown once said to me, if you take your nose off the glass and you can see the artwork, and I started talking with him about it, all of a sudden we came to be on a level, an equal level, and we were talking as colleagues rather than a mentor and our student. And I think that that's what's happened with Matthew and I. We've evolved into this new relationship. We both seem to have a better understanding of who each other is through our art.
Ian got interested in photography, which was a good choice on his part. And he graduated from Ringling with a photography degree. And when you look at his photographs of rooms, which he goes into a house and messes them up and then photographs them, he's interested in what those objects that they own, how they reflect the people who own them. So that part is coming from what I'm doing, but in her very much his own way. My daughter, she got interested particularly in cartooning and graphic novels. And she always saw herself as more of an illustrator, which means she was interested in portraying stories as well and also writing them. And that's what she's been doing, and she's a very serious artist. She is working constantly. She's finished one graphic novel, which is available in the bookstore too. And she's working on one that's going to be about 350 pages that takes place, the story of a family that takes place in the 1950s and 1960s and I think the 1970s. So she's had to do a lot of research on those periods and uses her knowledge of music and history and fashion and so on. Because my wife Kay is a writer, and so she's been a major influence on both of them because they both read all the time. Ian's is finishing a 3-part series that are novels that are about 50 pages long. Both she and Ian chose something they can do for commercial reasons as well as artistic reasons, which was good ideas too. They're both very humble about what they do, and she's never satisfied that it's good enough. So she's got a healthy attitude to the fact that you don't become an artist in 4 years, that it's something you do for a lifetime. It's funny because my wife being an artist and me being an artist or a writer and me an artist and a writer and former musician, and we had these 2 kids and we thought, watch, they'll grow up to be insurance salesmen or bankers or something, and we laughed and they said, well, if they do, at least they'll be bankers and insurance sales and know something about art and music and literature and plays. So maybe that's not so bad.
Serene was born 5 years after Jared, but she was pretty much his age because she always ran around with him and his friends and that, so she was grown up almost immediately. And she started drawing and making stuff. She's always made sculptural, things that are rather interesting. Other than that, they're influenced by the fact that I made art and what I would read, and we had books around, and we went to museums, and so they were exposed to art from a very, very early age. I mean, with myself, it's not like a matter of discouraging them from doing something. I think most people try and do that because they think that their children won't make enough money to make a living at it. But, that never bothered me. I mean, my fallback position when I was in college was to be a poet. So it's how you approach life. Well, I think Jared's probably more similar because he draws, and he doesn't make sketches, so it's kind of like an anti-Ringling kind of drawing in a way, because he paints paper with white house paint and then draws on it very carefully with pencils, and you can't make any erasures or anything, so it's either there or it isn't. So he'll spend 2 or 3 hours drawing something very carefully, and then it's done. So he doesn't really believe in sketches or sketchbooks or anything like that, and I don't particularly do that. But he has one way of working, and he's followed up on that for about 10 years, and that's kind of the way I work. Serene is basically much more of a conceptual artist who deals with all different kinds of images and materials and puts things together. So we're different in that way. I think we deal with important issues. If you look at Serene's work, her work is pretty straightforward. I mean, one of the pieces that's in this show is a human jaw that she took the teeth out of and cast her own teeth in lead and put her teeth in the jaw, which is, you know, pretty serious life and death kind of issue with art. And so that's, my work is somewhat like that. But I think it could be a family thing too. I mean, you know, we have a couple paintings by my grandmother who I never knew, you know, they're quite beautiful kind of paintings. And my older sister went to art school, so I think there's kind of a vein in the family that way. And it's just more followed upon. I think it's pretty widespread, but most people kind of keep it under wraps. I don't know why particularly, but that's the way it is.